Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Facing Mortality, and this episode is called Postponing the Grim Reaper. I would put this in the category of the good, the bad and the ugly. Now, if you think to the time when I was diagnosed, that was October 2022 at the beginning of then, and when I decided to do chemo, my first treatment was the beginning of March, and that lasted 12 cycles, which took me through to August. And then I think in October I made the decision to do radiation. So as you can see, I've missed a gap between diagnosis and the chemo starting, and in that time I was doing alternative treatments, which I will save for another video. I'm just going to jump ahead to this one because I have been putting it off, and I have had one attempt at this video already, but there were too many tears, so I'm going to try again. So the reason for my change of heart in terms of taking the chemo road when I had previously said no back in October was that I was told I had a 25% chance of killing the cancer, which meant there was a 75% chance that it wouldn't. So we didn't know if the chemo was going to kill any of the cancer, and if it did, would it kill all of the cancer? Well, I got lucky. I hit the 50% target in that it did kill a lot of the cancer, but it didn't remove it completely. So in terms of winning the lottery on that 25%, which were high odds, I didn't win it, which was the reason why I went ahead and did radiation. So that 25% chance was basically, the reason I said yes to it was because I thought they are high odds for lotto. That's what my boss had said, and I agreed with him. And I thought if I was to win that 25% and I didn't give it an opportunity, I'd go to my grave where I could have saved myself. And I thought, that's not right. I should at least give this 25% chance a go. And so I did. So why did I delay it? I delayed it because I was scared. I was scared of chemo. There was nothing wrong with this body, which is why probably people say I look so good. I'm having a bad day today. I'm very weak and I'm in pain. In fact, I think I'm going to go and grab some morphine before I continue. This body had served me really well until the diagnosis came. And as you know, that year was a really hard year for me, 2022, because my health was failing then. But prior to that, there was nothing wrong. So knowing all the horror stories of chemotherapy, I was scared. You know, some people jump at the chance to do chemo, and understandably so. You know, some of them are mothers and fathers who want to watch their children grow up or get married or go to university or whatever, you know. They have valid reasons to live and not be so concerned about at what cost to their bodies. And some people get through chemo okay. Relatively speaking, I did. Relatively speaking. But I was scared. It was a huge decision for me. Massive, massive, massive decision to go down that path. So I think I had discussed it with the oncologist in January, and by February we got the ball rolling so that I could start chemo beginning of March. And I had a port implanted. I don't know if you can, actually don't know if you can see it. I've lost, oh, wrong side. You can see the scar there of where the port was put in, and that port was so they could attach the chemo to it, get it running into the main valve, into the heart, and so it could be pumped all through the body. So I had the port put in, and I had to sign the paperwork to say I knew what I was getting into. Pages and pages of side effects to organs and things. No loss of hair. I think that's typical with a breast cancer chemotherapy, but this chemotherapy didn't have that. I had been losing my hair with the disease anyway, because the disease was taking my nutrients, and I was losing my hair. But I've sort of lost hair all my life and it's grown back, so that wasn't really an indicator for me either. So anyway, we decided to go and go down. No, sorry. So I had a friend called Tony who had undergone brain chemotherapy before. He was in his last year of getting it all okay. And because he'd been through it, he took me down the first 2 times for my treatment. And when we went down there, I said I wanted to bless all the treatment. I wanted to bless every single thing. It didn't matter whether it was saline solution or the chemotherapy that I was having while I was there, or the chemotherapy that I went away with. So I was basically on a 3-day chemo. So I'd get the first chemo put into me when I was down in Auckland, and then I'd go home with a bum bag with chemotherapy attached to me, all plugged up, and that would last till the Wednesday. So I'd go on a Monday and come back on, and the chemo would finish on a Wednesday. So anyway, on the first one, it was quite sad because I went down there looking like death warmed up, I think. And we blessed all the treatments, and I prayed that they would be loving light going through my body, that they would do as much as they could at healing and little destruction. And I did that on every single thing that went in the body. It was okay having a friend there. It helped the whole process a lot better. You know, when you go there, you're surrounded by all these other people that are hooked up, looking in various states of health. I remember seeing one woman who was very skeletal, and she was on chemo. And my understanding with chemo is that, you know, they keep throwing chemo at you to keep you alive until the chemo doesn't work anymore. The cancer just goes past it. And at that point, you know, you've probably done a lot of carnage to your body with the poisons from the chemo. So your body's in too weak a stance to fight back anyway. And so the thought of knowing that that was a potential path for me, that I would end up being chemoed until I could no longer be chemoed, that didn't appeal to me either. Anyway, we came back from our first treatment, and this is where it gets sad, and this is where my tears started yesterday when I did my first attempt at this video. So I'm trying not to have so many tears. I'll see how we go. So I got home, Tony brought me home, and then he went off his way, back down to his house. And I looked at my little kitty cat, Casper, who had adopted me. He turned up on my doorstep a year ago. And I named him Casper. And there were people down the road who were complaining about, you know, this cat that was on their property, that had a kink in its tail, and that was Casper. And I wasn't going to say he wasn't mine because, I decided he was my responsibility. So anyway, I took this little guy on board and had him for about a year before the chemo started. And when I got home after that first treatment, I remember saying or thinking, that's strange, he must be really tired. And, because he had been in his bed when I left that morning, and he was still there when I got home that afternoon. But I had so much going on in my own little world that I didn't really think much more of it until the next day, where I got up early in the morning and saw him outside with half his body paralyzed. And I waited, got him comfortable and everything, spoke to the emergency vet. We got him to the vets 5 minutes before he took his last breath. He was convulsing in the car. His bed started convulsing that morning. But we got there at 5 to 8, I think. He took his last breath. He'd been poisoned. Here I go again. So that was my first chemo treatment. That was what I woke up to the next day. Still under chemo, because I was under chemo for 3 days. Fighting for my life. Not long after that, another kitten turned up on my doorstep. Little guy. His name, I called him Calvin. He's very scared of people. Not surprising. He's still with me. So now I have the dilemma. I have to rehome my cats if I don't get a miracle. So back to the chemo. That's what I'm here to tell you about. Anyway, the next time I turned up to chemo, the guy sitting in the bed opposite me, who was having the same treatment as me, he said, "Wow, you look so much better than you did, last time." And I asked around, and sure enough, I did. I actually seemed to respond to the chemo really well. The markers didn't go down at that stage, and the oncologist was getting concerned. So when I was diagnosed at 69. And then the marker went up to 280 or something while I was doing this alternative treatment. And then when I started chemo, it was around the 280 mark. And after the first time, it didn't really come down. The second time, it didn't come down. And the third time, I think it did. And it went right back down to 69. How's that for interesting? So I kept on going, and I kept on being assessed because I was on the strong treatment, and we were watching it for neuropathy. So my jaw would lock up while I was on treatment, and then it would eventually go away over the course of those 2 weeks. So remember, I was having 3 days of treatment every fortnight. And neuropathy was one of the side effects. So we were watching that with the locking of the jaw, the fingers, the feet. And we were watching, for vomiting and things. So I had this huge cocktail in my little kit, my little cancer kit, which is orange. And I love the colour orange. So it's surprising I still love it, actually. lots of nausea pills, which I hardly took any. And what else? Yeah, I think that was basically what was in my kit. So where I was going with this was I ended up with thrush of the mouth, which is very common, obviously, because they say oral hygiene is extremely important through chemotherapy. And I thought I had oral hygiene, but obviously not enough. I guess the chemo I was on didn't help, but my tongue ended up with this huge, thick coating of thrush. It was awful to look at. My father was quite compassionate. When I showed him, he said, "Oh, that doesn't look too good." I said, "No, it doesn't, does it?" So I had to go on meds for that twice. I resisted at first because I thought I could get rid of it. Hopefully you've worked me out by now that I'm one of these people who thinks I can do it all myself. And the nurse said to me, if you don't get onto that, you're going to end up not ever being able to get rid of it. That was enough for me to get onto it. So I did. So anyway, after 12 treatments, chemo stopped, and the intent was to take a 3-month break and do MRIs and keep an eye on it, and potentially start at 3 months or 6 months, start chemo up again, but on a lesser degree. I didn't do that. But we saw that the results from the chemo were pretty fantastic in terms of killing the cancer. So my marker, I remember, was at 69, went up to 280 something. And then by the end of chemo, it was supposed to be, apparently it could never go below 3. That's the marker on your blood tests. And every cancer has different markers. So me talking about 3 is meaningless to someone who's got prostate cancer or breast cancer or brain cancer or anything like that. So this 3 mark, I was told I'd never get to it. Well, after the fortnight after chemo stopped, I was at 1.3, I think. And that didn't mean the cancer had gone. So anyway, it was still in a dangerous place. On the cancer that had metastasized to the liver was still in a dangerous place. So it looked like it had shrunk on the liver from the outside in. So it was still going to potentially create havoc over a duct, bile duct or something, and close it off, which would have me dying in a relatively short time. So the decision was made to nuke that and hopefully get rid of it. And I did that not really understanding the rest of the cancer in the body. But it is what it is. Because it's the rest of the body that's creating havoc now. And I don't want more treatment. Anyway, with the radiation, they put you on this, they have to build a special bed for you because your liver moves. So when you breathe, it moves. So as you can imagine, they're trying to come in at a very precise target on the liver so as not to cause too much carnage by burning, the liver. And I underwent in October, over a week and a half, I had 5 treatments, which were scheduled to last an hour each, but because I had the breathing under control, I didn't need to stay that long. I think we were over in 20-25 minutes each session. Anyway, so this bed was built, and I had to be in a certain position so I could keep my liver as still as possible. And then you had to sort of breathe in, breathe out through this tube, and then you had to hold it for a period of time so the radiation could hit the target, and then you breathe out, and you'd go through that several times. I think that was something like, I think it was like 4, maybe 5 times. I don't know. It's a long time ago now, but so I did that, and that left me feeling really exhausted afterwards, tired, which is a natural side effect of radiation. While I was getting radiation treatment, that was really hard too, because you're in the waiting room waiting to be called up to go in, and you hear crying, people who are getting treatment, and obviously it's really hard. People they just look depressed. A lot of people don't see, unless you're a caregiver going in with the person, you don't see that sadness, you don't see the toll it takes. You know, I've tried to put on a brave face through this journey. Not so much around my parents. Been a bit mean, but you know, you go through so much. Your body's exhausted from the disease. Your body is exhausted from the treatments. Your body's going through changes because of the treatments. You see people around you going through these treatments, not wanting to, knowing that Grim Reaper is at their door, that the odds are stacked against them, potentially, maybe not. Maybe they're just getting rid of some final bits of cancer and they can live their life cancer-free. That too, but it's still a journey. It's still a heart-wrenching journey. Because we don't know the outcome in life, do we? We can only be the best version of ourselves on the journey. So when I was undergoing chemo, I had lots of friends come and visit me. That was really nice. The other alternative was to sleep because the chemo just took over your body. It would have me struggling to stay awake. So what can I tell you about the changes that I noticed from chemo? I'm going to look at my notes here. So my hands. So I got neuropathy in my feet, the balls of my feet to my toes. It came on more so after treatment stopped, and it hasn't gone away. And it feels like I'm walking on straw in my, you know, that nothing feels comfortable. Carpet doesn't even feel comfortable. So I typically like to wear shoes and socks, or socks, I should say, over nothing. And my hands are basically okay. A little bit of numbness there, but not much. When I was going through the treatment, opening up cans of cat food was really hard because it felt like the can was that big and it felt like my thumb was this big. So that was hard work. I had to tell my mind, it's all in my mind. My finger's actually smaller than the ring on the can. And the locked jaw, that basically stopped, although it feels like it started up again lately, and I don't know why. I get this constant clicking in my jaw. My hands, see these? They weren't there before I started treatments. These, I think alcoholics have these too, I think, or can get them, I should say. It's liver damage. And obviously with not only the chemo going through my liver and my liver going, what do I do with this? Was also the radiation, burning and causing damage, permanent damage to the liver. I don't think the liver heals from radiation. So yeah, I have these little reminders. They don't hurt or anything, they're not itchy. And I've told you about the thrush, and I've told you about the marker going down. And the other thing, which I talked to other people about who had been on chemo, was Jekyll and Hyde. And I was told, oh, that's unusual. But when I asked other people, it wasn't so unusual. I had a split personality for the 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. So the week I was on chemo, I would start getting really agitated and angry. And the week of no chemo, I was okay. I was saying to God, oh, thank you for another day. Thank you for, I can wake up and look at nature and blah, 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 just enjoy life. And I'm glad I'm here. But the week of the chemo treatment, which was 3 days, but it took like the week to get through it took about a week for my body to get through it. My stomach's really sore. The week on chemo, I was snappy. I was just angry as. It's quite funny. One of the people from hospice said, "Oh, I'd like to see what that looks like." It's like, no, you don't. Yeah, I couldn't control it. I was aware, totally aware of my emotions, but I couldn't control it. And I just lash out. So I learned to stay just to stay to myself that week, basically, because if I was in bed and I could just cry my eyes out and whatever, that was okay. I wasn't hurting anyone else. But if I was out and about on that week of chemo, there was the possibility that I could hurt and regret and not do anything about it, because it happened every fortnight. Another interesting thing was I was hardly sick. In fact, I was never sick. I was nauseous from time to time, but I was never sick. So this huge cocktail of nausea pills that they gave me, I didn't need them. There was a special box though of 3 pills that you had during treatment, of my 3-day treatment every fortnight. And I had to have those, apparently. And there were no side effects with those pills. Can you imagine it? A pharmaceutical drug that has no side effects. Those pills, I think, cost New Zealand dollars 550. Are they available to the public health care people who undergo public care with cancer? Not that I'm aware of. But if you are under the public system, you could always ask about them. If you're interested to know what they're called, I can write it in the comments. So we're coming up to the end of the video. I've taken up enough of your time as it is. So I think it's time for me to go, and I know I'm struggling to get the words out of my head. Would I recommend chemotherapy and radiation? Can't. It's your decision. If you have to go through it, it's your decision. I've decided not to progress it, that I'm just going to let nature take its course, and if nature does not provide the miracle, then so be it. That truth could change. I'm dealing with the oncologist at the moment to find out what's going on, given the extra symptoms that I've noticed lately. But it's a personal choice. Does it create carnage? If you're on a heavy duty one, yes. My liver still isn't right. It's almost there. I don't know if it'll ever be right in terms of blood markers. You know, for some people, it's an easy decision because they'll do anything they can to live. Whereas I'd rather do anything I can with the energy that I have spiritually to live. I feel like I've taken as much as I can, or done as much as I can, I should say, to try and help myself. And it's less and less as time goes by because I just don't have the energy anymore. You know, people keep coming to me and saying, have you tried this? Have you tried that? I'm tired. So I'm not going to talk about another sad topic like this for a little while, I don't think. I'd like to talk about other things I've learned along the way. I know I've still got to come back and tell you about the alternative treatments and things, but I'll leave this one here. I hope it's been informative for you. It doesn't feel like it, but I thank you for your time and listening to this video.